I make it look easy, you took the easy way. We not the same, I make sure my people straight. I remember them days, like what we gon' eat today. Now young nigga walk around with 100K. Chris D on my feet when I walk away. Fuck playing it safe, I'ma take me a risk today. That's my mindset when I wake up. Young nigga, go get your cake up, that money gon' talk, I don't say much. If I ever go broke, it's a stick up. When I walk in this bitch, put your bitch up. Even if I was broke, she gon' choose up. If it ain't about the money, what the fuck they gotta do with us? I can stay stuck with the cheese, nigga, piece of crust. I done took out, nigga, worried about keeping up. Chasing these hoes 9 times out of 10, she a slut. Pussy ass nigga, but a wise up. Go get your money up, go fill your pockets up. If you ain't doing that, then we ain't the same. I'm focused on coming up, I done fucked up enough. I look back like, look how far a nigga done came. I was just voting for, now they hoe wonderful. Look what that money do, make a hoe change. But now I can't fuck with you, I know what's up with you. Chasing hoe, get the fuck out my face. I ain't got nothing to say, I got them racks in the safe. Go find you something safe to do, never thought I'd see the day. I play with 100K, bitch in my dick cause she knew a young nigga paid. When I had nothing, they know I was player made. Came from the bottom, they know that I'm self-made. Nobody gave me shit, I had to hit me a lick. Got bad in the trench, real deal came back with a vengeance. Then I hit the corner in the Bentley, let back the seat, now a nigga reminisce. Had nowhere to go, I was sleeping on the floor at Bubba J house. Couldn't even get alone, ain't nobody answer their phone. Now a young nigga headed to the trap. Nigga using Wi-Fi just to get by. Nigga, I don't really give a fuck about no motherfucking clout. Go get your money up, go fill your pockets up. If you ain't doing that, then we ain't the same. I'm focused on coming up, I done fucked up enough. I look back like, look how far a nigga done came. I was just focused for, now they hoe wonderful. Look what that money do, make a hoe change. But now I can't fuck with you, I know what's up with you. Chasing hoe, get the fuck out my face.
What's up, chat, man? We got a lot of shit going, man. What we doing today? We finna get into this whole big meat situation. I gotta find the video. We finna lock in for the show. Yeah, now let's get into it.
Big Meech set this whole thing up. As he explains in the interview I did with him on my page, I've read over 1,000 pages of the actual court documents. And this was posted on 50's Instagram.
Listen, if Meech did, I think he did the right thing.
I'm different from Matt. Yeah, he didn't do the right thing. I want to preface this interview that we're gonna do because there's some very, very serious people involved in this, and this is a very, very high-profile case that everybody's talking about. Everything that I'm gonna say in regards to this is gonna be from the actual court documents that I read that you can download on pacer.org. I'm gonna do my best to leave my personal feelings out of it, right? And I just want to speak to you from the facts. Now, I've read over 1,000 pages of what we're going to talk about today, which is the BMF, Black Mafia family, right? Which, when you hear that name, you think about Big Meech, right? And his brother. Southwest T, Demetrius Flannery, Terry Flannery, right? Now, unbeknownst to me, there's another dude, right, whose paperwork I've been reading. His name is Dion Lamont Gatlin. He goes by the name of Cuffy. He's out of St. Louis. And I don't know who gave them that name, but they are supposedly BMF St. Louis. You understand? And all of the paperwork that I've read that was titled United States of America versus Dion Gatlin, right, is what I'm going to talk to you about today. Now, a lot of people have talked about this, are still talking about this case. And a lot of motherfuckers, Matt, are just going off of how they feel, their personal feeling about Big Meech, their personal feeling about Cuffy, their personal feeling about BMF. I'm going to stay away from that. And I'm able to do that, right? Because like I said, I've read over 1,000 pages of the actual court documents from Big Meech's sentencing hearing, his application, his motion for compassionate release, to the Franks hearing, which was pages of the actual court documents from Big Meech's sentencing hearing, requested by Cuffy, testimony by Jack Harvey, Tammy Cowens, who is the central figure, who's the woman who was
the CI, right?
Right, she was the DEA informant. The CS is what she's listed in the paperwork as CS1, Confidential Source 1. Tammy Cowens, and that's where I'm gonna be coming from. Now I know you mentioned your man that I think you had on here, or maybe Matt had him on his joint.
No, Wade
might have had him on his joint and what he said, but everything that I'm gonna say, you understand, is gonna be from the information that I gathered from what I read.
Okay. So BMF, the two brothers they start selling drugs. They get big fairly quickly. They have multiple people running or working for them. It starts growing, right? Like, can we start from there?
Well, that part is not in the paperwork. So for this particular part, I'm gonna go on what hearsay is that
What's the kind of understood story? Just
Well,
the
Big
basic.
Meech and his brother, they wasn't getting no money in Detroit. The niggas in Detroit, it was other niggas in Detroit that wasn't letting them get busy like how they wanted to get busy. So they left Detroit. Not saying they wasn't getting money in Detroit, but it was some bigger players and some more robust dudes that, from what I understand, wouldn't let them get down the way they wanted to get down. And then they meet up with Cuffy in St. Louis, and it changes Big Meech and his brother's life. From what everybody is saying, even the cops in St. Louis. I was watching a YouTube channel on the way down here, The Lighter Side of Blue, which is some St. Louis cops. They're even gonna start talking about this case. And they had a dude on there the other day, I think his name is Joe Cronin, and then another DEA agent. Both of them niggas worked on the case. You understand? So, and even they attested to it, that really St. Louis, and even Cuffy says it, Big Meech wasn't getting no real money until he connected with St. Louis, that St. Louis really put them on. That's what they say.
And then, but that's, I mean, I thought it was out of Atlanta. I thought their case was out of Atlanta, wasn't it? Wasn't it?
Big Meech's case, I think he got prosecuted in the Eastern District of Michigan,
Okay.
Detroit. Some dudes got prosecuted in LA, some got prosecuted in St. Louis. Well, he was based out of Atlanta.
Okay.
At the end, as the way Cuffy told me, they both bought houses in Atlanta at the same time.
Yeah, convicted in Detroit.
Oh, convicted
Right.
in Detroit. Okay. Why? I was gonna say, I've always thought in my mind it was all centrally located out of Atlanta, but obviously I don't know what I'm talking about. So eventually they end up getting, well, they get busted, right? Like there's an investigation. We had Rad would be better actually than Rand.
Shout out to Rand, man. I watched that whole episode, man. Rand, shout out to you, man. I want to get you on my podcast too, man. Dope story.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting guy, and he went through kind of the whole investigation. How initially they didn't, and he's out of Atlanta, so how initially they didn't want to touch it,
Right.
But he explains kind of the breakdown.
So I have a quick question from someone, or if anybody doesn't really know. So are these guys started off as, were they rappers, music guys, or
No,
just
they-
strictly crime? Like,
Yeah, they're
no.
just selling. Initially, they're
what's
selling
going on?
drugs.
No, these are hustlers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
selling drugs, but then they get people under them. Then they just, you start moving up the chain, right? So you might be, a lot of these guys will start off on the corner,
Yeah.
and then they're supplying the guys on the corner, and then they're a step above that, and then they get a contact, which there's a whole thing on how they end up getting a contact where they're getting drugs from the cartel, right?
Right.
Like they're
At the end.
they're now buying directly from a distributor, so now they're in a much bigger. I think it was like 150 keys every 10 days or something like that.
And so at the time they were like a kind of like a big deal at the time.
They were-
too.
yeah.
People knew who were they were.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So they got tons of. I mean, one guy's not moving 150
Yeah,
keys.
yeah.
Well, they
You
were
gotta
doing
have-
They were doing like 2,500 keys a month
right. Okay.
toward the end.
So
It was a
they're
big
moving
deal.
They're moving a ton of product, right?
It was
so
a
they got
big
a ton
deal.
of guys underneath them. The problem is you can't. Nobody lasts long doing that. Nobody. So eventually, that whole thing falls apart. They start getting wires, and they were even watching the series The Wire while they're being wired.
Hey man, we checking this out. And then we're gonna jump on the game, man. We checking out, man, this Big Meech Paperwork, man. Bro said he read basically the whole indictment paperwork, 1,000 pages. So we finna decipher this shit. Not just taking what he said, but hey, get in the comments, man. Get in the chat, man. Let me know, man, what y'all think.
And so the wires catch them talking about different deals. Guys start getting busted. People start rolling over. They start seizing vehicles, finding more drugs, finding cash. Then they raid their houses. and eventually these guys get busted and they're grabbed. I love the idea that Big Meech, that the cops are coming in the front door and he takes off running out the back.
I saw Rand say that.
I thought that was hilarious. Because to me, if they're banging on the front door or coming in the front door, they already got 20 guys sitting in your backyard waiting for you to run out.
You would think.
The idea that that didn't happen. So that's funny. But, so the whole thing, this is the other thing. When I was locked up with Southwest.
Did you talk to him?
Yeah, I talked to him a couple of times. Only because I have a buddy named
Where was
Kay.
y'all at?
In Coleman.
Okay.
So I had a buddy named Kay, who there was a. How do I put this? Make this a short version. Short version is in Coleman every morning during the week. They kick you out of the unit. So when it's, I don't know what time it is, 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, they open the doors. It's a controlled movement. The facility or the compound. So they would open the doors and you got a choice. You can go to the rec yard. You can go to Votech. You can go to medical. There's certain places you can go.
But you got to get out of the unit.
You can't stay in the unit. You're going to get a shot. So I would go to the library because I write. The problem is, unlike the medium, you didn't have to rush to get a seat in the medium because the medium was always empty. Nobody's in the you know what I'm saying? There's 40 seats. There's 3 guys there. In the low, you rushed it there, it's filled with spenders. So these guys don't want to be hot. They don't want to be hot and sweaty. They don't want to go outside. So they rushed to the library. So I would rush to the library, and there was one table in the library. Honestly, not bigger than this. About the same size as this, maybe even a little bit shorter. And there were...
It's never been easier to start a podcast than with Riverside.
Man, I don't know. The gist of the whole story, but I feel like Big Meech did have somebody like that movie with The Rock, where he was like helping the police to get his brother out of jail, like some shit like that. That's basically how I feel. He did.
5, 6. So there's just enough table for 6 people. Whoever got there first would hold the table down. You grab a bunch of books and throw books on.
Right.
And so it's me. So I'm getting there so I can write my true crime stories. And the other guys that were there were all black guys. Almost all of them were there for robbery. I think one guy was there for the tax running the drop, the tax scam,
Okay.
right? Or in prison, the tax scam is called the drop.
Mm-hmm.
CJ, his name was CJ. So, I would rush there. CJ, whoever got there first would hold the table down, and that was a whole thing in and of itself because people were like, "Yo, you can't hold the table down. You gotta be like, yeah, bro. If you can sit here, but I'm telling you, you don't want to be here when these guys get here." And every once in a while, somebody would sit down and I'd go, "All right, bro," and these guys would walk in and you're a cho. Like most of these guys are chos. Like you could be a whiny cho, you're still a cho, and you're gonna have a 6'2" black guy who's known for home invasions about to walk in and tell you you're sitting in my fucking seat. You're gonna get up.
Yeah.
I'm getting up.
He's gonna make you get
right.
up.
And he'll just walk up and just stand right next to you and go and stare at you. And these guys go, they just get up and run out of that because now they got nowhere to stay. They got to get out of the library and try and make it the rec yard before the compound closed. Because if you're still standing there without a seat when the compound closes, you're gonna get a shot. Oh, listen, it was a brutal. Anyway, so I would go there and sit down, and so these other guys, they'd sit there, they're writing urban novels, and I'm kind of like Google. The white guy at the table's Google, right? Like, they're every once in a while they ask you some question that I'm thinking, are you serious? And but you can't say that. I got to be polite.
Right,
I don't want to
right.
get, that's all I need to do is get slapped in the library.
Right.
So I said, oh yeah, no, totally, no, it makes complete sense. Of course, yeah. So the Supreme Court is, so they would ask questions, and every once in a while, and I answer the questions, and they would this I always love this. They would always fuck with me. Now, they're right. You've read the urban novels.
Yeah.
They're horrible. Come on, honestly, they're the worst.
Yeah.
And I mean, Colby, you've never read anything like this. It's brutal. So I'm going at it with my black python and banging this shit, knock the wig off that, and pump some babies up in her guts. I mean, it's just horrible, bro. It's horrible. It's like, what are you writing? And so they're writing these things, and I'm writing true crime. And I used to always tell them, like, you should try and write true crime. You know, you should try and write. They're like, what? What are you talking about? Like, we're writing crime novels. Like, no, like real, like you guys have good stories. I even wrote a story about 2 of the guys. I'm like, you should write stories. And so I remember one time I was writing a story, and they go, this is when I first sat down with them. So I walked and sat down. They couldn't believe it when I sat down and said, hey, you guys are writers, right? Can you mind if I sit here? And they were like, yeah, you can sit here. Yeah, white boy. Yeah, all right. Like, this crack, you're like, you got some nerve, motherfucker. I'm just like, I'm writing, and they're kind of glancing at me. I know they're talking shit and like looking at me. And so anyway, what happened there was I was writing the true crime stories, and they're like, oh, what are you working on? You working on legal? I said, no, I'm writing a true crime. And I explained it to them. They go, what are you doing? I said, well, I met this kid, and I'm writing a story, and I'm going to, you know, maybe try and get a book deal or something. They're like, book deal? You're in prison. You ain't getting a book deal. I was like, well, what I'm going to try and do is get them into try and get them into a magazine or something. And they're like, hey, what? And I was like, yeah, you know, I'm going to write like a synopsis. A what? Like a long article. And they're like, yeah, oh, like, they're kind of like, good luck. So I write the whole thing, you know, and I've ordered the paperwork. I've ordered the Freedom of Information Act on this kid, everything. So I write the whole story. I then print out like I print up like 20 copies, mailed it out to like 10 or 20 different writers for magazines, GQ, Wired, Rolling Stone.
Really?
I get a guy back from Rolling Stone. He says he's interested. A couple of 2 or 3 other guys said they were interested, but they all were like, look, I can't get to this for another 6 months. I'm finishing a book, whatever. This guy said, I just finished a project. I can get to this in a month or 2. Send me the information. I send him the information. We work on the article. It gets in Rolling Stone magazine. So I don't say anything. But from start to finish, 6 months later, by this time I'm writing other stuff now. And they know I've written stuff. Oh, yeah, I got a letter back. This guy says he's interested. This guy says, yeah, they're all kind of spinning me, whatever. We'll see. And so 6 months later, I walk in one day. Boom. I'm like, hey, you know, I got that kid in Rolling Stone. I flip it open. My name's in Rolling Stone magazine, the article, the whole thing. They're like,
Dope.
They're like, what the I'm like, yeah, listen, I just got a letter from a literary agent. He's going to represent me. I said, he's going to try and get me a book deal. like 6 months later, I've got a book deal, and maybe probably 6 months after that, the book comes out, and I get a check for $3,500. Oh, and a couple months after the article comes out, they option the life rights, and I get a check for like $7,000. These guys are going.
Option your life rights?
No, the kid in Rolling Stone.
Okay.
They're just like, this motherfucker.
Shit is real.
Right. Then suddenly, when I was saying, hey, you guys have a good story, I should write your story, they were like, yeah, we're all right. Now it was, yeah, let's talk about writing my story. Listen. So I was telling them, you should write your story. I'm like, yeah, I'll write it. Anyway, so those guys, one of those guys was named Kay. Kay was writing a series of urban novels. I actually had dinner with Kay the other night. And so Kay was writing urban novels, and Kay was friends with Southwest. And he was they were in the same unit, I think. And he was trying to get Southwest to let Kay write his memoir or a true crime story on him. Mm-hmm. Southwest wanted to write a book about kind of almost like not a how-to book, or I always used to joke it was a self-help book, but basically it was like a financial empowerment. Here's how you run a business by a guy whose only business has been being a drug dealer. You know, and the whole book was about how he was the brains behind BMF. That was the premise of the book. He wanted Kay to write that book, and I was saying, scrap that. Your story is your story. Like at that time, 50 Cent had optioned or was discussing optioning his brother's story. So it was like, your brother doesn't even have a story written down. He's talking about optioning his life rights. You should write your story, and you could have a competing project, or at least you could go to 50 Cent and have your version written down. So I had that conversation with him 2 or 3 times. Absolutely not interested. And dismissive, like, nah, I ain't doing all, no, like didn't even want to hear it. By the way, Kay did end up writing that book. I don't know whatever happened. It may be out. I should have asked him about that. He ended up writing the self-help book. I don't know what happened to it. So in those 3 discussions, that's when I met him and talked to him.
That's a black dude breathing like that in the mic?
So I had no idea prior to meeting him, other than Kay. Kay's the one that explained to me
Who he was?
who he was. He was like, no, he said, he was like, bro, they were huge. They were this. A movie or a series, or I felt like he said movie. You know, he's going to do a movie on him. He's this. And at that point, 50 Cent had just come out with a production company. Like, that was right at the beginning. So I didn't know who 50 Cent, I knew who 50 Cent was, but I didn't know he had a production company. And if you had told me 50 Cent was coming out with a production company, you know, I would have laughed. I would have been like, right, okay, big deal. Well, come on. That's as silly of a notion as 50 Cent's going to come out with a vitamin water and sell it for $100 million. It's not going to happen. So anyway, you know, it's just one of those many stupid things I thought, and it was completely wrong. So he comes out with his production company, gets the rights to them, but that's how I knew, because Kay kept saying, you don't understand, bro, this is huge. This is a big fuck. But I'd never heard about it, so I'm like dismissive, like, okay, I mean, he's like, no, this is like the black version of Scarface. He's like, this is huge. He's like,
that's how white people be, bro. They be dismissive to other people tell you have a great idea, and then they want to jump on it and be like, oh yeah, it's cool, it's amazing, man, I should be a part of this. But behind talking to his friends, he's like, man, yeah, right, it won't be nothing.
And I remember this specifically because Kay said that they got 30 years, and he said they got 30 years because he said they went, once they got grabbed, they went to the prosecutor, and even though other people were rolling over, that the core group of these guys, whether Kay knew whether this happened or not, this is what he told me at the time. You ever read a headline and think, wait, that's not what I read earlier? Or hear a story that was covered 2 totally different ways and think, I wonder which one's telling the truth. We all know the news can be biased. Algorithms push stories that they think you want to see, and some outlets spin straight up.
So far, man, we've been getting into his backstory. White dude been to prison, black dude been to prison. The black dude read the whole Big Meech federal file, and he's saying that Big Meech is this snitch. The white guy basically interviewing him and wanna really just hear what he got to say. Do we have a real case wise of why he think that way? And it's just gonna sit there and have a conversation about it. And we gonna chat about it as well. Y'all can go big.
Leaning news saw 0.8 billion meant to believe. You can also see things like how news sources are covering a particular story, political leaning of news outlets, and the blind spot feed, where you can see stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. In a world of clickbait and echo chambers, having access to all perspectives is more important than ever. That's why I love ground news. It helps me cut through the noise and stay truly informed. And right now you can get 40% off the /in and all was it. And that was obvious 30 years, and nobody was going to cooperate against anybody. And that was it. And that was obviously something that Kay and the guys at the table really respected. You know, so that was always my thing, that I thought, oh wow, nobody rolled on each other. They all took 30 years.
Well, if you read
True or not?
What's true?
I said whether it's true or not. That's what my impression at the time.
Yeah. At the sentencing hearing, Big Meech and his brother get into damn near a fist fight in the court, in a room off from the courtroom, because Southwest T doesn't want to take a plea. He wants to go to trial. But Meech comes in out the gate
Take a plea.
taking a 30-year plea, which was the low end of the guideline range for him. I think, if my memory serves me correctly, I think he was category 2, level 42, which
That should be life.
was 360 to life.
Yeah.
For real.
Right?
Right.
Now,
The low end is 30.
right. So by him copping a plea, right, he got the low end of the guideline range, and being the kingpin of a CCE, right, once he takes his plea, nobody else within BMF anywhere on the planet can go to trial, because you have the kingpin, because you have to have at least, I think, 5 people underneath you to be labeled as the kingpin of a CCE. So once the main nigga takes the plea for 360, nobody else can go to trial, because if somebody decides to take it to trial, they can reference that, the main dude, the leader, admitted that he was ahead of this conspiracy. You understand? And if need be, they can use him to.
And you were one of the people. So technically, they could go to trial. It's just it's not going to look good, because this guy already took a plea. He said that he was ahead of the organization, and you were one of the guys underneath him. So it doesn't look. There's already evidence.
Exactly. So if you're trying to say, "Oh, this didn't exist," that ain't. Listen, we already got it, and the father, and I don't mean no disrespect. I want to keep the respect to Big Meech. I want to keep the respect to Southwest T. I don't know these guys, but I don't want to come on this show and be disrespectful to anybody. These dudes did fair time, and I did fair time, so we both know how important respect is. But Southwest T was livid with his brother. Southwest T wanted to go to trial, and them niggas got into it in the courtroom, and the father had to jump in and break it up and convince Southwest T to take the 30 ball too.
So I also know that,
and this is all in the paperwork.
I also know that there had been a motion put in because they wanted to. The government was trying to try them together, and they wanted to separate. That they had put in a motion to try and separate the trial, and the government was saying, "There's no try. We want to try them together." So obviously, there was obviously a difference in the approach to the trial, right, to their defense. So it sounds to me, and I don't really know, but I heard that a motion had been put in asking for, can we separate the trial so that then maybe, Meech could plead guilty and Southwest could try and go to trial. But obviously I could see how Southwest would be irritated or upset with him taking a plea, because it's like, if you take a plea,
I gotta take it.
It doesn't look good. Well, it doesn't look good for me. It's already a strike against me, I guess.
Well, they had them together.
If they could bring it up, I'm assuming they could bring it up, or at the very least they could go to, whether Meech would or wouldn't, I don't know, but they would at least try and pressure him to testify at the trial, right? You go to trial, if these other guys have pled guilty, once they're incarcerated, a year later, if this trial's happening, the government comes to you and says, "Look, you got 30 years. You could cut that in half right now. Just testify at the trial. Maybe get 20 years off. You could be out of here in a few years." That'd be pretty hard too to do. Mm. So it's kind of forced upon him.
The 30 years is forced upon Southwest T.
Okay. So they end up going to, they go to prison.
They go to prison. And, he's doing his time. And
were they ever in prison together? Were they ever in the same prison?
Who, Southwest T and Meech?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I don't think they
I doubt it.
I don't think they were.
Follow up.
I don't know where Southwest T went, but I know Meech, I think his first stop was Jessup, Georgia.
I like to watch
because he specifically asked to be close to Atlanta, and the government granted that to him, and I think they sent him to Jessup. But what's interesting is a lot of people bring up, and this part is pure speculation. if you look at the number of keys that they were moving, the volume of drugs, you're talking about 2,500 keys a month. You know, and with Big Meech's criminal history, you know, it should have been, a lot of dudes say it should have been life, right? But, you know, me having done fair time and you haven't done fair time, you know, a lot of people want to say, well, it's boilerplate. You know, whatever this is what it should be. But we all know that the feds make up the rules as they go. And, you know, anything can happen. But a lot of people seem to think that he should have got life without the possibility of parole based on his criminal history and the volume of drugs that he was.
Well, there's no parole in the federal system, so that's irrelevant. But you know what I'm saying? What I think is, if they thought they could go to trial and give you life, they would probably give you 30 years just so they don't have to go to trial. You know, unless it was just egregious and they had such a strong case and it was something like, you know, murder or something, you know, it'd have to be over the top for the feds to choose to go to trial instead of giving you 30. If 30 was within the realm of possibility.
Well, the feds wouldn't choose to go to trial. It'd be the defendant that would choose to go to trial, no?
I mean, he could take a plea to the low end, but if you're saying a lot of people said it should have been life, that's basically them saying that you're pleading guilt, that the feds would have come in and said, let's say he fell within life. You're getting life no matter what.
He fell within life.
Right.
His guideline range was 360 to life.
Right, but 360 is the low end. That's not life. You're saying he chose 360. You're saying a lot of people said it should have been life. Yeah, but they would have had to go to trial.
No, I'm not saying Meech chose 360. The government,
they offered 360.
They gave him 360.
Right. What I'm saying is that you're saying people are saying it should have been life. Well, maybe it should have been life, but 360 was a possibility if you plead guilty. If people are saying they shouldn't have given him the chance to plead guilty, they should have given him life, then they would have had to go to trial. Because he's not going to plead guilty to life. You see what I'm saying? He's pleading guilty. Yes, it's life. It's in the possibility, but they're going to recommend the low end. 99% of the time, they're going to go with the low end if the government recommends it. So I'm saying, who's going to plead guilty to life unless the alternative is the death penalty, which they weren't up for the death penalty because there's no murders in their case.
No.
There is the federal death penalty, but they don't apply.
Yeah.
There would have to be multiple murders that they were responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he ends up getting 30 years. He pleads guilty to 30 years.
In 2005, it's 30 ball.
And for the most part, the government has to, if they agree to recommend the low end, they have to try and go with the low end, because otherwise, if they say they had gotten there and said, no, it should be a life, Your Honor, we lied, well, then people stop pleading. Why would I plead? That they just backed out on their agreement. So they gave his 30 years, goes to Jessup. I don't know where Southwest went. I know eventually he ended up in Coleman. Even then, I don't think he did all his time in Coleman. I think he went somewhere else after that.
Well, he got released. Southwest T got early released on a compassionate release.
Right. But I'm just saying, I know he must have gone somewhere, and he eventually showed up at Coleman. At the low.
There, yeah.
And I don't think he even stayed. I think he was gone already when I left.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I don't think he was there. I think he might have gone to a medical facility. Or maybe that was Meech. I don't know. Somebody I thought went to a medical facility.
That was probably Southwest T, which was why he got
compassionate release.
The BOP. There's two versions of the paperwork that I read. One says that he applied for compassionate release and got it, and another one says that based on his BOP health services records that they recommended compassionate release for him because he was obese and he had a lot of health issues as far as high blood pressure and different things like that. And, they know all of that based on your medication, especially if you go into health services every day. So he ended up getting a compassionate release. And then Meech tried to get a compassionate release when his brother got it. And he tried to use the same argument, right? You tried us together, right? Like what you were alluding to, like they tried to separate it and they wouldn't separate the case. Yeah. So if my brother got compassionate release, then I should get compassionate release. But Meech got denied compassionate release because they found that his health
wasn't bad enough.
No.
Well, I can tell you right now, Terry wasn't the picture of health. He was definitely overweight. You know, and there's a ton of stuff that comes with being overweight anyway. So
Yeah.
okay, so what happened? So Meech is in the halfway house right now. So what's the fallout, or what's happening right now with people saying that he was working with somebody, a woman on the outside?
Well, 50 Cent kicked it off.
Okay.
50 Cent kicked it off, I guess, when Meech took a picture with the rapper Rick Ross.
Well, first let's talk about first real quick. Meech ends up somehow getting in contact with 50 Cent to sell his life rights to him, right?
Not true.
Okay, so how did 50
Tammy
Cent?
Cowens.
Okay, so through her was it through
Right,
her?
right.
Okay, how does that happen?
Well, Tammy Cowens.
Who's that?
Tammy Cowens is a DEA informant who had a relationship with another member of BMF out of LA called Blue Da Vinci. That was his lady in the early 2000s. That's how she gets introduced to Meech and BMF, through Blue Da Vinci.
What and I've only heard this briefly. She had some kind of company. Did she have a company and he was asking her to launder money for him or something? Was that
He who? Meech?
No, Blue Da Vinci or something.
I don't know nothing about that part.
Okay, so somehow or another, this is what my understanding, and I probably got it wrong, but she had some kind of a company or something, and somebody, a drug dealer, somebody came to her and was trying to get her to launder money or.
Well, you're talking about Terry White, the Terry White case.
Okay, and then.
She was involved with him in a romantic relationship.
Oh, is this the FBI agent?
No.
Okay,
yeah, Tammy Cowens is the DEA agent, but Terry White is a hustler out of Atlanta.
So what happens there? Because that's kind of how she gets tied in with the FBI, right?
Well, she stops dealing with Blue Da Vinci, right? And she's enamored and fascinated with Big Meech, right? So Big Meech falls in 2005. Somehow between 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, this girl Tammy Cowens ends up with Big Meech's life rights and power of attorney over his life, right? And how she got it, what was his compensation for giving her that, has never been explained, right? And this is where things get a little shaky for Meech, because a lot of the questions are like, what did you get in return for giving this girl your life rights and power of attorney, right? When you had family members that you could have gave your life rights to, or you could have kept them yourself, did your time, and got out and controlled your own destiny.
Right.
But this girl ends up with his life rights, and then she ends up being a DEA informant, right? Who takes down Terry White.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Do you know how she became a DEA informant?
Well, this is according to the paperwork, according to the Franks hearing, right? And this is Jack Harvey on the stand.
Who's Jack Harvey?
Jack Harvey was the lead special agent inside of DEA Atlanta that was responsible for bringing down BMF nationwide.
Okay, so I was saying FBI, it's DEA.
It's DEA. Yeah. And Jack Harvey was the main nigga that led that charge.
Okay.
Right? So the way it's explained, the way Jack Harvey explains it in the Franks hearing, while he's on the stand getting cross-examined, I forget which attorney, but there were 4 attorneys for the defense. And this is all going down in eastern Missouri. This is in St. Louis, right? Jack Harvey explains that Tammy Cowens is talking to, the way he terms it, quote unquote, an ex-con. And Tammy Cowens is asking this ex-con, like, yo, I'm involved with this guy whose name is Terry White. He's asking me to use my credit card to buy cashier's checks.
Okay, this is
right?
Yeah.
And make them out to the name of his business for, say, let's just say 40 grand. And then Terry White would give her back 50 grand in cash. So he's cleaning up his money and she's making a dime or 10,000, every time she's done this. And there's even one reference in the paperwork that it was up to 100,000. She had did like $100,000 deal with him at one point. So,
damn.
The way it's explained, Tammy Cowens is talking to this ex-con, right?
Laundering money for him.
I dare you to let me build you a completely free.
So now we into Tammy Cowan and seeing how she got into the picture and they going from there.
She says, can I get in trouble for this? And the ex-con dude is like, yeah, you can get in trouble for that. You better go straighten that out and go see my man Jack Harvey.
Oh, okay.
This is what the ex-con tells,
Yeah.
but Jack Harvey never says who this ex-con is.
Okay.
Right? You better go see my man Jack Harvey.
He's not wrong. She definitely could get in trouble for that.
But check this out, though. Check this out. Check me out. Go see my man Jack Harvey and get in front of this thing. She's like, all right. So soon as she hangs up with the ex-con nigga calls Jack Harvey on the phone and says, yo, my girl is coming down there. This lady's coming down there. Her name is Tammy Cowens. Boom, boom, bang. She's coming down there. Click. So Tammy goes down and basically lays it out what Terry White is doing. And this is to Jack Harvey. She meets with Jack Harvey, I want to say, in the DEA Atlanta office, right? And at this point, Terry White is not under investigation. Jack Harvey doesn't even know who Terry White is. He's not even on the radar.
Damn.
But based on the information that Tammy Cowens volunteers at the direction of this quote-unquote ex-con, right now, Terry White is got a flashlight and a magnifying glass up his ass by the DEA, by Jack Harvey. And this begins in 2008. He gets arrested in, I want to say maybe 09, 010, and pleads guilty and gets sent to prison in 011. And she is romantically involved with him, right? They're in a relationship. And Jack Harvey even explains in the paperwork that Tammy Cowens was the heart and soul of the Terry White case. And he thought it was odd because she came to him, right? She wasn't a drug addict looking to give information to get drugs. She didn't have a case. She wasn't a defendant in a case. So she didn't need to do anything to cooperate, to get time off. She just came under her own volition, just like wanting to do the right thing and knock this man off, Terry White.
Well, I mean, I also think she had gotten herself into a position where she knew if this guy gets in trouble someday, she could get in trouble. Like, that's probably an incentive.
Not true, because Jack Harvey even says on the stand, and he says he told her, for what you have done and what you're doing, you can't get in trouble for this.
Okay.
He tells her that.
Was he paying her, compensating her?
He who?
Was the government compensating her?
At this point, no.
Okay.
She's not getting. She's not a paid informant. She ain't got no case. She's not a drug addict. Look, like I say, she just comes out of the blue. Goes to Jack Harvey. Out of all the other DEA agents in the world, she could have went to Atlanta PD. She could have went to Marietta PD. She could have went to
Yeah, but you just said she was directed to him by somebody.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And that's the linchpin to this case, right? Because Jack Harvey is responsible for bringing down all of the BMF, including Meech.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? And this is where things get shaky for Meech again, right?
Because he's got a connection to him.
He's got a connection to her, right?
Well, you just said he's got a connection to that. This is the guy
to
that
Jack
brought
Harvey and to
her.
Tammy Cowens, because she's got his life rights right now.
Right. She's going to see him in prison, or
She's riding to see Big Meech in prison with Terry White in the car, calling Jack Harvey on the phone. Hello? Jack Harvey picks up. She puts the phone down while this shit is still on and is talking to Terry White about his money laundering, his drug cases, and Jack Harvey is listening to all this while they're going to visit Meech in prison. Terry White and Tammy Cowens.
Okay.
So that's how funky this case gets, right? And it seems to me, and this is even down to cuff, and let me qualify and let me take a stand. I'm a Cuffy nigga, right? I'm pro Cuffy, right? I'm not anti-Meech, I'm not pro Meech, but I'm pro Cuffy.
You can see where he's coming from. You get his.
I'm fucking with Cuffy, and I got a story will tell you how I got introduced to this whole case too. It was while I was in prison. So Tammy Cowens ends up with Big Meech's life rights and his power of attorney for no reason, right? What's your compensation? Are you gonna give somebody your life rights and power of attorney, your life for nothing? Yo, just take it, Sean.
No, I'd have to have I mean, if I were to do that, I would have to have a tremendous amount of trust. I'm not going to sign it over for nothing.
Thank you. Stop right there. Stop right there. You're not going to do it on the strip. Yo, take it. Knock yourself out. Go sell my life rights for $2 million. Man, have a good time. I'm going to chill right here. I'm going to chill in the feds right here in Jessup. You go do your thing. You're not doing that.
Well, I don't know that there's any reason for him to have had to have done that. I don't know why you would do that. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
That's my point. Because I'm not finna give you mine. I said, listen, if I give you my life rights and I give you
you can represent me on my life rights without me signing them over to you. You just go get the deal. We'll sign that later. If you get a deal.
Right. But I need something out of it. If I'm gonna give you my life rights, I need something out of it. You understand?
Right.
And we're talking about a person who's a businessman, right? This is a hustler.
Right.
You know, you can't and what I don't want to do, you can't deny Big Meech and Southwest T's leadership and genius in terms of organization and running a business. That can't be denied, right? Because you don't get to do you moving drugs in Los Angeles, you're moving them in St. Louis, you're moving them in Atlanta, you know, and you handling this thing, right? So these guys are very, very smart guys, and they understand capitalism. I sell you a product, you give me money. I give you something, I get something in return. So the life rights, the power of attorney, right? And then now you go and Terry White gets busted, right? And Tammy Cowens and Terry White are together and they're going to visit Big Meech in prison together, right?
Okay.
So these are the things, and it comes down, like every dude that gets close to this girl, Tammy White, ends up getting knocked off, right? And Jack Harvey even alludes to that. Let me say that. So while Harvey is on the stand and he's explaining how Tammy Cowens came to him and his conversation with the ex-con, the defense attorney asks him, like, you know, why do you think this ex-con did that? And Jack Harvey expressly states, I think it was like a jealousy. He was competing for her affection. The ex-con was competing for Tammy Cowens' affection, you know what I'm saying? And Terry White was already with her, right? So that is also in the paperwork, right? Maybe you want to keep certain people away from a woman that's got a lot of control over you,
And she's coming to see you on the regular. She's answering your phone calls.
Ain't
She's
no
running,
question.
Running errands for you.
Ain't no question. And also in the Franks hearing, one of the defense attorneys says on the record that in August of 2012, which was the same month that the wiretaps went down in St. Louis, Tammy Cowens went to visit an inmate in prison.
Hold on, I'll be right back. Right there. Let's go.
6 times in 1 month, and she's sending money in to this inmate consistently. You understand? Mm-hmm. And we know that she's linked up with Big Meech. You understand what I'm saying?
If a man really hated ads, here's what he would do. Day one, he would install Pi on his computer with...
Oh yeah, she moving wacky. For real.
So it's a very, very interesting case, man, and very, very perplexing, complicated, convoluted. Mistakes were made. You got DEA agent misconduct, right?
Is he having an affair with? He's having an affair with her, right? The
Who?
DEA agent, right?
Not Jack
No?
Harvey. The other, there's another DEA. After Terry White gets busted, right? Jack Harvey retires in 2011.
A new guy comes in.
The new guy comes in. His name is Keith Cromer, who Jack Harvey worked under, right? And when Keith Cromer comes in, Keith Cromer is a wiretap specialist. They begin to pay Tammy Cowens $2,500 a month for her information as she begins to supply information on Cuffy now, at the direction of Big Meech.
Okay. Why? How do you know this?
Because that's in the motion to suppress.
Who filed that?
The motion to suppress wiretaps was filed by Cuffy,
Okay.
Dion Gatlin, right? Tammy Cowens says in the affidavit, if you look at the motion to suppress, page 11, page 12, in September 2011, Tammy Cowens states that Big Meech directed her to call Fidel Suarez, which was a Mexican dude out of California with direct ties to a cartel that he was locked up with in Detroit, and to connect Fidel Suarez and Cuffy in St. Louis so they could sell drugs, and Big Meech gets a finder's fee from the drugs that they sell. And this is while Meech is in the joint.
Okay.
Right? It says it in that.
That doesn't seem too far-fetched, because I mean, I know guys that were moving, I know Mexican cartel members that were moving hundreds of tons of drugs over the board while they were locked up.
Yeah.
Like they're directing, like if they're in the Mexican jail, that's a given. They've got 5 cell phones, they've got run of the place. But I know guys that have been in federal prison that are running that are running
Ain't
operations.
no question. It don't stop.
Yeah, that are running operations. It's more difficult, but it still happens. Matter of fact, I know guys that have been recharged while they were incarcerated for getting busted. While they're inside, so I'm inside the whole time, giving information over the phone or in person when people come to see, and then eventually 3 years later, that whole operation gets busted, and these guys get recharged, and they were in prison for the entire conspiracy, and they get recharged.
That's an interesting point. Because Tammy Cowens expressly states that Big Meech is a part of that conspiracy, right? Keith Cromer gets on the stand. He also testifies on the stand under oath that Tammy Cowens told him that the conspiracy with Big Meech, Fidel Suarez, and Cuffy, and he was to receive a finder's fee. That's the second party that puts Big Meech in the conspiracy. And another attorney, all of the attorneys were alluding to it, but when Cuffy gets busted, right, Meech doesn't get charged. He's an unindicted co-conspirator on Cuffy's case.
Is that what you just said?
Which is initiated by Tammy Cowens.
What are the? Trying to think. How does the indictment read? Does it just say that there's Do they give him an initial and say unindicted? Like, how do you know he's the unindicted co-conspirator?
Well, I did a live interview on my podcast channel. The podcast was sold. Cuffy called in from prison. He's in FMC Lexington, Kentucky. And I asked him point blank and frank on my show. And he explained the whole thing, that Big Meech is an unindicted co-conspirator on that case. Right?
Okay.
And you just said it, and I know you're supposed to get re-indicted, whether you on the street or you in the joint. If you involved, you get a new charge. He never gets charged.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm your inference is that he doesn't get charged because he's working with the feds. That's why they don't charge him. They list him as an unindicted co-conspirator, just to let everybody know that he's one of the conspirators, but we're not going to charge him. And there's a reason for them not charging him, because he's working with them. Is that?
Matt, he's an unindicted co-conspirator. And before I even brought this up to you, you just said it before you've seen dudes get charged from selling drugs in prison. You said 3 years later, everybody gets busted, and the dude gets a new charge.
Right.
So that's it. Now, why he wasn't the unindicted co-conspirator, it never really explains that, right? There is no, and I think this is where a lot of the debate goes on with this case, is because you don't find a 5K1, you don't find the Rule 35B from Big Meech, a 5K1 by Big Meech. It's not in the sentencing hearing where the assistant U.S. attorney steps up and tells the judge, well, Your Honor, so-and-so provided a lot of information and considerable assistance in this investigation, and we're going to ask for a downward departure. You don't have that. You don't have a proffer, right? And if that's your measuring stick for whether he cooperated or not, then you're not going to find that, right? But everything that I'm explaining that's in the paperwork, you know what I'm saying? You've been to the feds, you know how it go.
Well,
you can draw, you can conclude.
Well, you can, so
Real rap.
there's lots of ways, just like when we're talking about to begin with, saying that it's boilerplate, right? Like, you sold this many drugs, here's where you fall. Right? That there's lots of people out there who will say, "Oh no, the sentencing guidelines. It's honestly, it's designed to be very fair." The problem is, it is fair, but you still have humans involved, right? So now you've got, if there's humans are involved, then there's a way to be manipulate the system, right? So, for instance, let's say you're part of the way they're gonna give you an incentive to plead guilty is they say, look, if you make us go to trial, we're going to hit you with all of these enhancements.
They're gonna knock your
Right.
dick. You getting
Right.
life. They're gonna bust your head to the white meat.
So, but if you plead guilty, so you're sitting there saying, yeah, but if I plead guilty, I'm going to get 15 years. And they go, well, yeah, but if you plead guilty this week, we'll drop this enhancement and this enhancement. And you're looking at 7 years. And then it's like, oh, okay, but I did do these things. Yeah, but we're going to drop them. Do you see what I'm saying? So like that's manipulation. It's not supposed to be like that, but it's manipulation. I'll give you another example, and I've used this example.
Well, let me, and I want to hear that example, but let me just say, in terms of this Cuffy case and this Meech case, what you're saying is going to be pure speculation. And I just want to say that for the audience so that they know that
right.
based on the paperwork that I've read, what you're saying is exactly true. But that didn't happen here as far as the paperwork is concerned.
No, what I'm trying to say is that the government will give you an example. If let's say somebody pleads guilty, let's say somebody cooperates and they go, I don't want my cooperation showing up anywhere. And so that puts the government, first of all, they wouldn't do this for just anybody, by the way. They wouldn't do this for just something.
No, for me or for you or for the dude down the street.
No, like most people are too small time, right? But at a bigger level, they would do this probably. I don't know if Cuffy, if the however many keys that he was moving, I don't know if that.
Cuffy was a player, man.
Okay, well, I don't know if that meets that, if that's what happened here, but I do know that if you go to the government and you say, hey, I'm going to cooperate, but I don't want my cooperation to show up. Typically what they'll do is they'll file something and then they'll seal it. The problem with that is if you look on the docket sheet, you're like, yeah, I don't see a Rule 35, but I do see the government filed something and it was sealed. I do see you were brought back to court and there was a hearing and it was sealed. I do see that this happened and it was sealed. And I do see that your sentence was reduced and the reason is sealed. Like, I'm not stupid. I can figure out you did something, they filed a reduction, there was a hearing about the reduction, the judge filed and said we're going to reduce his sentence, and then it was reduced. Like, I'm not stupid. Something happened there. What else could it be? I mean, you're not a spy. You know what I'm saying? It's not like it's national security. You're not spying on the Russians. You see what I'm saying? It's the only thing it could be. The only thing that makes sense is you're either spying and it's there's some kind of a whatever. There's some kind of a international government secrets that they don't want to reveal, or you're cooperating. But there are other ways. People think, yeah, that's the only two reasons. But there's other ways to do it. There's other ways to say, hey, we're gonna put in a motion. We're gonna reduce your sentence because you now meet this law, or we gave him an enhancement that we now agree doesn't apply. Right? That would be very, very, very rare for that to happen. But I think under certain circumstances, a U.S. attorney would be willing to do it, but you would have to have pressure from like whatever government agency is involved, right? So if the IRS is investigating you, or the DEA, or the FBI, or Secret Service, or whoever, that agent would have to, put pressure on them, like, listen, we can't do this. It's going to come out. How about this? They file a 2255. They say this didn't apply. You guys agree to it. You're not 2 levels off. Something like that, right? Like, that's possible.
Well, see, that's what the inference is drawn, is that in Meech's situation, Tammy Cowens was that, right? She was the buffer between his name being on a 5K1 or Rule 35B or a proffer, that she was working on his behalf, because she says it expressly when she first meets Keith Cromer after Jack Harvey retires. It's in the paperwork, but Tammy Cowens ends up being such a liar, that you can't really believe much of what she says. But when she, according to the paperwork, when she is introduced to Keith Cromer, she asks him, can I get Demetrius Flannery a time cut for the work that I'm gonna do?
Right.
And he tells her, we'll talk about that. We'll work on that. So that's what you're explaining. She was that for him.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Making sense, bro. And even how the white dude said. Yeah, they do it that way too, man. Somebody can be untold. Stay out the streets, man.
Was that in court documents or
She said that, and that's in court documents.
court documents that she
And
had
I got a
filed,
text
or-
message that I'm going to show you from 50 Cent that he posted on his site that he put up about a month ago, where he asks her, and he shows the text message feed, and she says it again.
Yeah, that's it's here's the thing. If I was going to visit you, I can't imagine taking that upon myself without bouncing it off you. Does that make sense? If I was visiting you and I was in this situation and I was working as I wonder if, like I said, playing, looking at both sides, like, is
If
she
you're
acting-
in jail, say
yeah.
it, say it.
Yeah. If first of all, if you're in jail and I'm acting as a CI or a confidential source, whatever you want to call it, and I'm coming to see you, do you know about it, right? Like, if you know about it, first of all, if you know about it and you're letting me keep coming to see you, and that doesn't look good, right? Like, I mean, if you're a street guy and you live by the code and everything, which, listen, based on everything that's out there, it looks like these guys did. They went in, they pled guilty, they went in, they did their time, they didn't roll over on everybody, right? But then again, 20 years is a long fucking time.
30.
So, well, I understand 30, but at this point, they only did, what they do, 20, 23, 24? The guy had been locked up, 20 years? I know guys after a few years.
It don't take
ready.
long.
It don't take long to say, you know what, I'm done.
Right.
Fuck you guys.
Right.
So I'm saying, if she's coming to see him and he knows what she's doing, he's okay with it. Like, most guys, if they're really, whatever, about that life, then they're gonna be like, look, you can't come see me anymore. I'm sorry. I don't know. It doesn't. I'm not okay with what you're doing, and two, it doesn't look good for me. In front of these guys. What if they find out? What if one of the guys that you put in here finds out, sees you? What if this guy shows up here, goes in and sees you, and I'm sitting here working? It's going to look horrible for me. So either he knew and was okay with it, or he didn't know. If he didn't know, and she didn't tell him because she felt, I never told him. Why didn't you tell him? Because I knew he wouldn't be okay with it. Okay, I get that. So if you're Big Meech and you're holding true to the code, right? You're a street guy. You're not going to taking no Rule 35, no 5K1. I'm not cooperating. I don't deal with snitches. I don't hang out with them. I don't talk with them. Nothing. Okay. This girl's coming to see me. He doesn't know anything about what this chick's doing. Fine.
But she's got his life rights, though.
No, that's fine.
All right, go ahead.
He trusted her. For some reason, he trusts her. He trusts her 100%. I gave her my life rights because she's going to shop them. Somehow or another, she convinced him that he needed to sign him over to her to do that, which is bullshit. But let's say that's what happened. He believed. Let's say she got the better of him. He doesn't even realize she got the better of him. Here's the thing. She knows, in this scenario, she knows he is not okay with cooperation. Everything he's done up to this point has proved that.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Then why would she go to the new DEA agent and say, I'd like to get a Rule 35, a third-party cooperation Rule 35 for Big Meech? Why would she do that knowing he's not okay with it? Do you see what I'm saying? He would have to be okay with it. For her to go to this is the part that, and look, not everything makes sense in the world. I don't know this. But
I'm listening to you.
Here's what I do know is that I've known these guys. I've been around these guys. Listen, Kay, the guy that I went and had, he wouldn't be okay with it. I know guys who are like, I'm not okay with it.
Listen, man, a woman can't go rent a bike in my name without telling me.
Right. So for her to go and approach the DEA agent and say, I want to get him something, at some point she's got to go to Terry and say, hey.
Not Terry, Big Meech.
I'm sorry. Big Meech. She's got to go to Big Meech and say, listen, I'm setting up this guy. I've been dating him. He's moving a bunch of keys. I'm working with a DEA agent. I'm going to get you out of here. Meech is going to be like, the fuck are you talking about? I don't want nothing to do with that. He's going to stand up right then, walk straight to the guard and say, I'm ready to go. I'm going to be right over here. The guard's going to go, okay, stand by the door. Okay. What about your girl over there crying? Well, I don't know. She can go. I don't know. I don't know
And he's going, and I'm going to tell her,
don't come around.
Don't you do a motherfucking thing for me.
Of course, that's a given. Don't do anything wrong. I'm not going to accept that.
A woman can't order a pizza, Matt, for me and tell me she got anchovies and bell peppers on it without asking me first. When you get to the pizza joint, hold on. What you want to be? Hold on. Let me call Sean.
All right.
Sean, what you want? On a pizza. So you mean to tell me you going to go and cooperate everything that you say? You set up the whole scenario with the DEA on my behalf, and I'm in this joint with killers and without telling me?
And
Come on, man.
This isn't something that, I mean, I understand this is something she's saying now. Like, she can always say, oh, I said this 5 years ago when I was there. That's just her, on strength of her word. Did the DEA agent say this on the stand, that is what she came to me and said?
Yes.
Okay, so
that's in the paperwork.
So he's not going to get up and say in front of the court 4 years ago or 2 years ago, she approached me about getting a Rule 35. So clearly that did happen. That's not something she now talking to 50 Cent, she just came up with. Oh yeah, I even told him that. No. She can't go back in time. She obviously she left the visitation room, went and talked to the DEA agent. And so in my opinion, if that's true, I don't think she would have done that at 50 Cent. I don't think she would have had that conversation with the DEA agent had she not already had the conversation with Big Meech
and get clearance
in a visitation room to say, this is what I'm doing. Do you want me to do this? He would have had to have said, yeah. And I tell you right now, I had a buddy. I don't know. I've told this story before, but I don't think you've heard it, unless you watched all my stuff, which I would like you to. I'd like to think you did, though.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
You don't have time for
So I have a buddy, and listen, my buddy, I keep waiting for him to call me and say, what the fuck are you doing? Tell that story. This is the Puerto Rican princess. Oh, I'd love to say my buddy's name too. Oh, listen, I like the guy so much. I think I probably have said his name in the past. I don't know, maybe, but. So anyway, I'm just gonna say Scott, okay? I am gonna describe Scott though, just to let you know what we're dealing with here. Scott's mother is probably, and I'm sure I got this wrong, probably Korean, right? Korean or Vietnamese? No, she's gotta be Korean, right? So father's American, mother's Korean, they have a child. That's a good combination. Like, Scott's no homo, okay? No Diddy. Scott's a good-looking guy. I mean, there's not many. I don't know anybody that wouldn't look at him and be like, "Damn, what a bastard." 6 foot tall, good-looking, the whole thing. Got the perfect genetics going. He starts dating a girl he used to call the Puerto Rican princess. She's Puerto Rican. So they dated. They lived together. She had a best friend. He starts seeing the best friend. One day, the Puerto Rican princess comes home. The house is the apartment's cleaned out. And by the way, he's a drug dealer. He was a drug dealer at the time. So he cleans out the house. She comes home empty, just her stuff. The girl starts calling around, and she's in love with him. The girl starts calling around, finds out he moved in with her best friend. She's so devastated, she packs up her stuff and leaves the state of Florida. Done. Just devastated. And he'll tell you, when he told me the story, he said, devastated, bro. He's like, I was in love with this chick, and he said, it crushed me to do what I did. He said, I tried to do it, like, talk to her. I couldn't do it. That's why I just had to she came home, I'm gone. He's like, that's how bad of a move it was. That's how fucked up of a situation it was. I did her that dirty. He knew it. So a year later, It's him and a crew of guys, right? Selling whatever they were selling, H or whatever. Boom, they get busted. And they all get 10 years. Goes to prison. I meet him in the medium. So I meet Scott. We're in the same unit. Talk to him all the time. Good guy. There was another guy they called DiGeronimo. DiGeronimo was a tattoo artist. Like on the street he was. So in prison you can imagine how amazing. Like this guy's living large. He's got tons of money. He's doing tattoos. He's tattooing everybody. But he was Scott's roommate. So one day I come in to see Scott one day. I walk in. I said, hey, what's going on? And he's looking at Mike. The DiGeronimo's name was Mike. So Scott looks at Mike. They kind of like had this quick, hey, what's up? And the look, and I go, what's going on? Like I could tell. You could tell something's going on. So what happens is he says, the Puerto Rican princess came to see me today. And I went, what? He goes, yeah. She moved back to the area, bumped into some old friends, and they told her, you hear what happened with Scott? And she's like, no. Got 10 years in prison. She's like, what? 10 years in prison. And she's like, oh my God. Starts crying. What are you talking about? Well, what happened to the best friend? By the way, the girl that he left her for, she hung out for about 3 months. After he got arrested, she was gone. They don't talk anymore. She's gone. Puerto Rican princess was still crushed over Scott.
She was still in love with him.
Yeah, still a year. This is maybe a year or two into his bid. 2 years. Let's say 2 years into his bid. She gets online, finds out how do I get signed up for his visitation, signs up for the visitation, comes to see him.
Damn.
So he just gets called one day. Boom,
That's
visitation.
crazy.
What? Walks into the thing. She's there. Walks over. She's bawling, crying. She says, listen, she says, he's like, well, I can't believe you came to see me. I'm so sorry what happened. I've always felt bad about it. I'm sorry. He's like, I feel horrible. He goes, I'm thinking she came to see me because she knew, not thinking this is what's coming. He goes, this is not this girl, by the way. This is not a street girl. She says, I'm going to get you out of here. And he goes, what? She goes, I have a friend. Her boyfriend went to jail. She told me that if I help the DEA get somebody arrested or something, like she doesn't even have a clue. If I help them, then they said that they can give you the credit and I can get you out of here. And he's like, what are you doing? He's like, you can't do that. I'm not going to let you do that. Like I took a plea. Like I could have done that for myself. He's like, I didn't do that. I'm not doing it. He's like, you're not doing that. And she's like, look, I'm going to do it. Now, Scott has always maintained, I told her not to do it. Okay, Scott, I know you did, but I know why. But, that's not what happened. So what ends up happening is he's like, yeah, but can you believe that? And I said, we're sitting there and Mike's looking like, yeah. He's like, yeah, that's what she's saying. And I said, everybody needs a good pair of jeans. What I like about they don't actually they're written off, they're gooping off. Jeans get dot. That's 50 with you. Your cack. I'm not gonna do that, bro. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not like that. I ain't gonna. I'm looking at Mike like, you don't have to do anything, bro. Just kick back and wait. And he's, nah, I ain't gonna do that. I'm not fucking with that. I told her no. Okay. A month later, she comes. She says, I met a guy. I met this guy. I know this guy. A couple other guys. This friend of mine introduced me to him. I've been hanging out with him. He said, I told her no. I told her, don't do it. Don't do it. I know what you're thinking. Don't do it. A couple weeks later, she comes back. She's like, talk to the DEA agent. He's, of course, the whole time, I told her not to do it. For somebody who said not to do it, Scott, you know step by step what she's doing. So for somebody who said don't do it, she keeps coming back and giving you the blow by blow. But you said no. Okay, I get it. You're a tough guy. I get it. You're a stand-up guy. So then she comes back one time. And by the way, this isn't my only story. You've heard this from multiple guys, but this is Scott's part. She comes back one day. She hooked up. She's wore a wire multiple times on these guys. She's probably banging the guy, right? She's probably dealing with the guy, or dating him or whatever. She gets this guy on tape. She gets a couple of his buddies on tape. She's got him dead to rights. Few more months go by, bam, they bust them all. So I don't really know. At this point, I know they were talking about it, and I'm joking about it so much, I think I made Scott feel uncomfortable. He kind of stops telling me about it, right? Stops telling me, so whatever. I'd say a year later. We're now 3 years into his sentence, his 10-year sentence.
That he's got to do 8.5.
He has to do 8.5. We're in the median. I walk in one day.
They tell him to come to R&D.
No, I just walk in his cell one day. You know what Scott used to do? Scott used to take the trash cans and they would fill them up with oil, and they would take a stinger and boil the oil, and he would make like deep fried. You ever had the deep fried wraps where they deep fry?
Yeah. The
That was
Strombolis.
Yeah, that was
Fish.
his hustle.
Right.
So I come in one day and they're wrapping them up and everything, or were they? Or I don't know if he was going to make them. For some reason, I went in there to see him. Like, was he sitting there with them? And they're going, and he's fucking tell him. Would you just tell him? And I go, what's going on? What? And he goes, tell him. And he goes, I'm on the pack out. You're on the pack out? I'm like, what? Are you going to like a low? What? I don't. And he's like. And he goes, he's going home.
Going home, nigga.
He goes, what? He's like, he got immediate release. They're releasing him tomorrow. Not even halfway house. He's going home. And I went, no, the Puerto Rican princess? And he's like, yeah. Like, holy shit. I was like, out. And he goes, yeah. He goes, that motherfucker he just did 3 years on a 10-year bid. 3 years. And I go, I can't believe she did it. I said, dang, bro. I said, that was the right move. And he goes, no, I told her not to. I told her, and Mike's looking like, Mike probably knew the truth,
Right, knock it off.
Yeah. But he's like, no, I told her not to. It's okay, well, that's either way. So listen, next day, packs up his stuff, tells everybody he's being shipped to the low.
Oh, you lied about it?
He's walking out the door. Yeah, man, I'm going across the street to the low. And just bolts. Listen, when I got out of prison, I think he saw me on some program. He builds custom pools in like Dallas or Houston right now. Got a massive company. Has a brand new wife. Has 3 gorgeous kids. All little boys, look just like him, and just rolling in money. He turned his whole life around. Good for him. But, you know what I mean? The Puerto Rican, and listen, I gave him shit too. When I talked to him on the phone, I was like, bro, tell me, because I could see the pictures on Instagram. I would look at it, I'm like, bro, tell me that this is the Puerto Rican princess. And by the way, this chick didn't look Puerto Rican. She looks Asian, the chick I'm looking at. But I could be wrong. Maybe there's Asian there. Right. And I don't know. And I was like, tell me this is the Puerto Rican. He's like, nah, bro, that didn't work out. I'm like, you're a fucking scumbag. You are a scumbag. He's like, well, what was I supposed to do? It didn't work out. I got out. It didn't work out. I'm like, man, this girl got you out of prison. And listen, and this was not a girl that knew.
That's wild. Got him out of the fed. And he still didn't be with her. That's crazy.
What was going on? You know what I'm saying? She was not that. She was a middle class girl.
She loved him.
Yeah.
And he dipped on her anyway.
Mm-hmm. The new wife is very pretty. Very pretty.
Most dudes that do jail time, and the woman that sticks with them through their bid, it's usually hard for them niggas to leave them girls, man, because, when you're at your lowest, whoever sticks with you when you're at your lowest, that means a lot to you, man.
Yeah, that means everything.
That means a lot, if she's sending you money or sending you books or whatever.
Yeah, especially because it's a...
Listen to this. Dude, leave this girl for her best friend in the state of Florida. He just packed up, left. She came back, all his stuff gone, her stuff still there. She packed up, moved to another state. Dude get jammed up, get 10 years in prison because he sell dope. The girl best friend stayed with him 3 months. The other girl find out he in prison for some old friends. She go tell him that she messing with some other dope dealers and that she can get his time cut if she working with the Fed. Mm-hmm. He told her, don't do it. Come back to everybody in the pod. They told her not to do it, but told him the scenario. And then as it's going through, he able to come back and tell them play by play what was going on, what she was doing, and then everybody like started looking around, and this dude right here started dragging it, so he stopped like telling it to everybody. And then she get all the way to the end, they get busted. She come tell them they gonna cut your time and everything. He don't tell nobody till the day before and tell him he getting shipped out and telling everybody when he leaving with his bag that he going to a low, which is another prison, but really he going home. But he telling everybody that he ain't do it. But it's like a scenario same as like with Big Meech right now. He say the dude end up not even being with the girl even when he got out.
Yeah, that's great.
And then he say he live in Dallas, married to a new woman, got 3 kids. He build custom pools. Talking about he doing real good.
But then sit there and wonder why beaches be true.
That's crazy.
Absolute one-sided relationship. There's nothing you can
You could do
that
for
girl.
her, and she's
Nothing.
doing everything for you. And dudes get out and they never leave. They may fuck around on this one and that one over there, but they never leave that girl that roll with them through the whole joint.
Yeah, and I think
This is kind of related. Like, if someone's super wealthy and they're locked up for 10 years, like, could they pay somebody to do that third-party cooperation?
absolutely,
Like-
absolutely. So
There was a firm. There was the people who got busted. There was the
That's
girl
right.
out of Texas. Them
there's
out
been
of
multiple,
Texas.
but there's been multiple, but absolutely.
They sold third-party
Party-
cooperation.
law firm, the law firm.
Right.
And is that legal to do or no?
Hell no, that ain't legal to do. They got busted. They got sent to the feds.
Yeah.
Well,
But they made a business out of it.
well, it's questionable. I mean, is it legal? I don't think it was. I don't
Man,
think it
you
was.
can't do no shit
I don't
like
think
that,
it was
man.
expressly illegal. Well, wait a minute. I'm paying. So I get busted. I go to jail. Colby says, "Hey, I need you back here to host the podcast. I know a guy who knows a guy. We can get you out." The difference is you're paying him to do that. I mean, the government pays him. The government paid her. But the problem is they did something where for some reason they turned it into hey, this is obstruction of justice or
Right, because if
whatever.
you go to trial,
The government's going to figure out how to get you.
if you go to trial and you put that person on the stand who cooperated for you that you don't know, and they're able to, through cross-examination, determine like you don't even know this motherfucker.
Right.
How did you, then it's, their
Record, edit, and share your podcast all in one place with Riverside. One touch recording in crisp 4K. And finesse it with idiot-proof editing. Clean up audio like magic with plenty of ways to make it your own. You can generate viral clips auto-magically. So you can post with confidence. And blow your audience away. Meet your end-to-end podcast studio, Riverside. Try it for free.
testimony, it don't seem like it would hold much weight. Like it's like
Well, if they still
compelled.
I don't think it's expressly illegal. But I think that the government, if they want to get you, they're going to come up with something. So they were upset about it. And that, by the way, that law firm you're talking about, that's not the only time. There was a huge thing in Miami saying that this has happened over and over.
I believe it.
There's a guy named Kevin, it's called Godfather of the Night or Godfather of the Darkness. Kevin Pappas. Kevin Pappas. Matter of fact, you look? It's Kevin Pappas, and I want to say it's Godfather of the Night. He has a whole book about how he cooperated, went from a life sentence all the way down to, I think he did do 10 years in jail, and he got himself out, and he was in prison selling third-party Rule 35s for other inmates, and he made a couple $1 million. He ends up getting busted. Obstruction of justice is what they got him for. They end up dropping the charges, and he does end up getting out. His lawyer got in trouble also. But I think they dropped all the charges because they came up with charges to charge him with, but they weren't going to stick. And so they eventually dropped the charges. He's got a fascinating story because they had re-indicted him and sent him back to prison. And he had, oh gosh, it was like 2020 or Dateline or somebody was coming to see him about how he had been stuff, what he was doing. And when the U.S. attorney found out about it, they came down and said, listen, don't do the interview, and we're going to go ahead and we'll get you out of here. We're going to have you charged. We're going to have you plead guilty to this, like some minor charge. We'll get you moved to a halfway house. And he's like, no. He said, if I tell them and you don't do what you say you're going to do, then
I'm stuck.
He said, they'll never come back.
Right.
He says, you know that.
Right.
And you guys have already, you knew what I was doing. Because he's being visited by the FBI, by the IRS, by all kinds of people working these deals in the prison. This was in Atlanta when it was a pen. He actually moved him to a camp at one point where he met his wife, who was Mrs. Hawaii. She left her husband and married him. Oh, listen, his story is insane. So, did you find it?
How do you spell his last? What's his last name?
Pappas.
P-A-B.
No, not B. I think it's P-A-P, like Pappas.
P.
Kevin Pappas.
Probably 2 P's.
Yeah,
sound like a Greek name.
It is. It is Greek.
Okay.
It is.
Godfather of the Night. Yeah, there is.
Nice.
Yeah.
I can't remember anything.
You called it.
But I did. I read the whole book, and I spoke with him one time. He because it just so happened that he actually knows a buddy of mine in Atlanta, but I'd read the book before that. And my buddy was telling me, I got a buddy up here. And he's like, yeah, he was actually in prison. He kind of started to explain. I go, oh my God, is that Kevin Pappas? He's like, oh my God. I was like, yeah, I just read his book. So anyway, he ends up telling the U.S. attorney, this is in the pen. In Atlanta, in the pen. The next day, 2020, 60 Minutes. I think it was 60 Minutes was coming to see him and interview him. That's back when you could get cameras into the prisons. They were coming to see him, and he's like, no, I'm going to do the interview. It's already been cleared, everything. And he looked at the U.S. attorney, and he told him, the U.S. attorney sat there. He's like, how can you not do this interview? Like, it doesn't look good for us. He said, you make a phone call right now, and I walk out of here with you, and you put me in a halfway house now. Oh, I can't do that. You're the U.S. attorney. You can fucking do that. You can make a call and do it. I know you can. And he does know, because he's been involved with these guys for the last 5 years working deals, getting his time cut from life down to 10 years. And he sat there and he said, the U.S. attorney sat there and he went, all right, well, I bet I'm going to make a phone call. And he gets up and goes and has to, this is like pre-cell phones, goes and makes a phone call and comes back, and 5-10 minutes later, they come in, they say, Pappas, come on, go pack your shit up. And he walks them right out of the fucking jail. I don't think that would happen now, but this was back in like the 90s, 80s or 90s. So he had been sentenced like under the old law. So anyway, the point is these deals happen all the time. And there's one thing that so my buddy Pete, who had done the thing with Wade, he had talked about Big Meech, and and I watched Pete did 2 videos with Wade. On
Crime
Wade,
Entertainment
on his channel, where Pete breaks down everything on how he thinks that Meech absolutely did not cooperate or take part in this, and he has a completely different theory than yours. Or interpretation of what everything says. So here's one thing that when I listen to Pete, and Pete's super articulate and analytical and looks through everything, but there were a couple of things that he had said and that I was like, I don't really agree with that. And one of them was this, and once again, like, I don't know what the truth is, but here's one of the things that Pete had said about Meech was he was saying, you're the largest black drug dealer like in history that had been sentenced to 30 years. And he was like, they're not going to reduce your sentence for knocking off some guy for a couple of keys.
Yeah, that's bad information.
Now,
but go ahead.
I think, in my opinion, I was locked up with a guy who was absolutely cartel. He was in the unit with us in Atlanta City Detention Center. And what he was doing, and listen, this is a guy who'd been locked up for 2 years. He's sitting in the detention center for two going on 3 years. There's only one reason you're doing 3 years. You're either and he'd already been sentenced, by the way. You've been sentenced. You're still in the county still in the lockup, right? Still in that marshal's lockup. You're cooperating, or you're waiting on your appeal, and he didn't have an appeal. He'd been sentenced, and what he was doing was this. He had his people in Mexico setting people up to come across the border and get busted. You're a Mexican, whatever. You're a Mexican in Mexico, picking tomatoes. You're living off of $200 a month. You got nothing, or maybe you're working for the cartel already. You're loading, you're getting grass, or you're whatever. What do they call that? Bringing in the grass. I don't know. You're a farmer. You're making grass, or you're harvesting grass. You're doing whatever. You're working in a lab. Whatever. You're making no money though. So he would put these guys in a vehicle, pack the vehicle with 400 pounds of marijuana, send them across the border, get them busted. Boom. Reduction in my time. He can tell that guy, you're going to get the mandatory minimum for $400 in marijuana, which is 5 years. That's it. You're going to get 5 years. Will you do 5 years in a federal prison, which is like the Ritz-Carlton for these guys? One of them, I know one of them because I knew his cellie had told me. A couple times he had guys drive across the border, get busted. One that he was having people fly in. So they're flying in, a landing strip, flying right over, dropping off the drugs, and getting caught at the airport. 5 years. But so he wasn't doing the same thing over and over again. Sometimes they're driving through, sometimes they're flying in. They get busted. And these guys they're getting busted with a mandatory minimum. They're getting 400 pounds. It's nothing. It's 5 years. You're going to be out in 4 years. It's nothing. So, and they were knocking off his sentence. This is a guy who had hundreds of, or whatever, 40, 50 tons on an indictment. He's looking at a life sentence or 30 years, whatever he had pled to. Whatever it was, he came in, pled, and he's paying his lawyers to bust people to get his sentence, So when Pete said that, Meech, they got 2,500, kilos on there, and they're looking at, they got 30 years, and they're level 45 or whatever, but they wouldn't give them a cut for something small. But that's what was happening with this guy. So I know that I've seen that. In my case, when I got a reduction for 5 years, okay, well, I had a huge case. I got 26 years. I got 5 years knocked off for a guy that he got 6 months added onto his sentence. The other two people in the case got probation. You got probation, you got 6 months. They recovered $500,000 in proceeds. I got 5 years. Like, in comparison to my case, in his case, I shouldn't have gotten anything.
I saw...
By that logic.
Yeah.
By Pete's logic.
I saw Wade's, that interview he did with the gentleman that you speak of, and the way he termed it was exactly like you said. The government's not going to give Big Meech a reduction for busting somebody with 2 rat-ass keys, which was the exact terms that he used in reference to Cuffy. Now, what he fails to understand is that legend has it is that Cuffy is the nigga that put Big Meech on, right? That St. Louis really is the impetus, right? And the beginning of the explosion of BMF as we know it. And it was as a result of Cuffy. And Cuffy explains, I'm the first nigga that put $1 million in his hand, Big Meech's hand, and he started crying. Now, at this time, St. Louis wanted Cuffy wanted Cuffy. Allegedly, there were two government witnesses lost their lives, right? There were homicides allegedly related to Cuffy and his crew, right? So
if this is what you can get him on, we'll take what we can get. We want him off the street.
right. His analogy is not accurate. Like you say, you just gave the scenario in your own personal case, and in this other case with this cartel dude, you know, it wasn't the keys. When the government, when the 5-0 want you, they want you. They'll take anything to trip you up in order to jam you. And Cuffy, by this time, the DEA St. Louis had took over the case from DEA Atlanta because of all the misconduct, alleged misconduct with Tammy Cowan sleeping with, having a romantic sexual relationship with Keith Cromer, who was the group supervisor for the DEA. Cuffy was a major player. You know what I'm saying? So his argument, I didn't listen to none of that. And then he really was harping on the fact that there was no 5K1, no Rule 35. You know what I'm saying? He was looking in the sentencing hearing. And every case is not going to have that, as you just alluded to on many instances. You know, it's not going to be that cut and dry. Where you're going to be able to see a document. Where's the document? This is a little more funky. You know what I'm saying?
This guy that I'm going to mention, he actually had a sentence reduction. A guy I know, I'll give you an example, is that he got, so he when he went to sentencing, his sentence was like 178 months, okay, for a gun charge. It was supposed to be like 25, like 30 years, let's say. 25 years, 30 years, whatever, because for the mandatory minimum for armed career criminal, like you have different levels of armed career. So he was at 25. I want to say, I could be wrong, but let's say for the sake of argument, he was at 25 years. He cooperates. They give him 78 months. When he goes in front of the judge, and the judge is saying, I'm going to give you 78 months, he stops. He tells his lawyer, can he give me 180 months? And of course, the lawyer's like, it's 172. Like, what are you doing? Why do you want to give him? Do you want 2 more months? Yes, I do, because he knew his judgment and commitment would say armed career criminal, 180 months. That's the mandatory minimum. There's different for armed career criminal. If anybody knows, there's different mandatory minimums. He had the 25, but the next one down would be 15. That's 180 months. So he said 180 because he knew if he could go into prison with his judgment commitment, and if they say, yo, man, we need to see your PSI, he'd go, what are you talking about, bro? I ain't no snitch. I got my judgment commitment right here. And this is exactly what he did every prison he went to.
Yeah.
I got 180 months, bro. If I cooperated,
I would be less than that.
I'd be less than that.
I'd be under that.
And they look at it and they go, yeah, bro, sorry, man, you're good. And that's what happened every single time. Yeah. But that's smart, right? Like that's...
Yeah, he knew what it was because he knows, man, that paperwork shit is serious in the feds, man. They wanted, like when I got busted with my case, to get me to cooperate, they wanted to get me to cooperate. I never did. They used to show them, we want you to turn in some of your clients. So obviously I'm bigger than my client, right? Any of my clients. So this just, his argument has to fall to the ground that the fact that you can't swap out somebody smaller than who you are and get some credit.
Yeah. Well, like I said, like a lot of what Pete said in that video, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But there was one or two things I was like, it's not necessarily. There's more than enough instances where I've seen that happen. So, But I think Pete's very. Like I said, he's very analytical. It's very cut and dry for him. If he can't see it, you see what I'm saying? He's looking for
the specific document.
Like, listen, if he had pulled the document and there's like 3 court hearings.
Let me read this.
If there was 3 court hearings that were sealed, he'd be like, oh yeah.
All right, so here's the post from 50 Cent, right? This is the post from 50 Cent. Tammy, this is 50 Cent asking Tammy Cowens. Did Meech know you were providing information when he was in Jessup Penitentiary? Meaning FCI Jessup, because Jessup is not a USP, was an FCI.
Right.
Tammy's reply, yep. Well, in Jessup is when I met DEA for Terry White, Mr. Jack Harvey. This is when discussion started on he wished he could tell or give me something to help him get out, but his name couldn't be attached. They would kill him because of who he is. This is when I first told Jack Harvey, if Meech tell him where the money is at, could they give him a 15-year time cut? Feds came back and said no, they will give him a 10% reward. Meech said, fuck it, that the money rotten first. During Jessup is when he told me to go to Jack Harvey. He provided me the name Jack Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
Now this was posted on 50's Instagram.
Right.
What do you want
It's not
me to say?
looking good. It doesn't look good. Listen, if Meech did, I think he did the right thing. I'm just saying, I don't want to do any prison. I don't know this guy. I don't know these people. I got to go.
I'm different.
I gotta go home.
I'm different from Matt. Fuck that. He didn't do the right thing. Nah, I'm different from Matt.
Yeah.
I'm different from Matt. He didn't do the right
I
thing.
know you guys. We're not gonna.
Because Cuff, man, we got to talk about Cuff, man. We got to talk about Cuffy, man. So, how I got introduced to this case, right? What I'm sitting. I didn't know anything about this. I'm sitting in Morgantown, FCI Morgantown. I'm in prison, and one of my main mans in there, brother by the name of Kevin Magruder, my nigga Black. I call him Black. I go and I download Rick Ross's song, the rapper Rick Ross, Big Meech. I think I'm Big Meech, and he used to let me use his MP3 player, right? Mm. So I give it back to him after I'm done using it, and he sees me a little while. He says, "Man, why you download?" He's from East St. Louis, Illinois, which is right across the bridge from St. Louis, Missouri. He said, "Man, why you download this police ass nigga song on here, man, with this rap?" And I'm like, "What you talking?" This is 2014, right? And at this time, I'm a Rick Ross the rapper fan, and I'm like, "What you talking about, man?" He said, "Man, Big Meech is a rap, man." He told, and he starts telling me about the whole story. But I don't think nothing of it. So, what was it, maybe 4 or 5 months ago when 50 Cent kicks up this thing with Tammy Cowens and him and Big Meech start beefing. I call my nigga Black in East St. Louis and I say, "Yo, Kev, is this the story you said?" He was like, "Yeah, man, that's my man Cuff." He said, "Man, me and Cuffy go back to when we was 18, 19 years old. We started hustling together." So, and he tells me the whole story. And I did my first video based on what my nigga Black told me. That's the first video, part 1 I did on my YouTube channel, The Podcast Was Sold. Then I got the paperwork and I started reading it, and there was some things that were off from what he was telling me, but the underlying premise of the story was the same. And Cuffy tells me that him and Meech met in 1990. 1991. That Meech somehow ends up coming to St. Louis. Cuffy puts him on, teaches him how to really hustle. The niggas in Detroit wasn't letting him get no money, the money that he wanted to get. Not saying he wasn't getting money and he wasn't a player, but Cuffy explains that he put Big Meech's hustle game on 10 when he came to St. Louis. They befriended each other. Cuffy eats at Big Meech's mother's house, eats at her kitchen table, knows the whole family. Big Meech goes to Cuffy's mother's house, eats in his kitchen. They're like brothers, and they're running this massive drug organization. I think at this point, it's in St. Louis, and Meech might have even been still in Detroit, or maybe moved to St. Louis, but eventually they both buy houses in Atlanta. And Tammy Cowens ends up, Meech puts Tammy Cowens in touch with Fidel Suarez and Cuffy. Long story short, Cuffy ends up getting busted as a result of the work that Tammy Cowens is doing for the DEA, supplying them information about Cuffy. This is why Meech is in prison. When Cuffy gets busted, Cuffy reaches out, has his attorney reach out to Meech with certified letters and mail. Certified return receipt requested that, yo, Meech, this girl you put me in touch with then got me jammed up in this case. Get at me, man. I need you to sign an affidavit saying that you don't know nothing about what she's doing and you don't know, come to my rescue. He doesn't hear from Big Meech and still hasn't heard from Big Meech since that time. And this is around 2013. So that is where Cuffy comes involved. And this is also not another good look for Big Meech, because why wouldn't your friend is reaching out to you? And like I say, they're all in this conspiracy together. Meech is in prison, connecting Fidel Suarez and Cuffy. He's receiving a finder's fee for the deals they're doing through Tammy. So he's involved in the conspiracy. He ends up being an unindicted co-conspirator, right? Then this honey you dealing with that you gave your life rights to is an undercover DEA confidential source, right? That's perjured herself on the stand, that's expressly stated in affidavits and in motions to suppress that Big Meech set this whole thing up, right? And, this is the case that gets Cuffy jammed up, that is the predicate case, as he explains in the interview I did with him on my page, that led him to getting convicted on some other cases where there were some alleged homicides involved tied to him. And to get a Franks hearing, right? A Franks hearing is not something that you could just apply for a motion and they give you a Franks hearing. The government has to really, the underlying premise to get a Franks hearing, there has to be some major misconduct and some malfeasance in the affidavit used to indict you. And in this case, it was the wiretap affidavit, right? So Cuffy applies for the Franks hearing and gets it, right? And I don't think anybody thought Cuffy was going to take his case to the extent that he took it, because if he quits and gives up, none of this ever comes out. But he takes it to the length, and this is how all of this shit comes out, that Tammy Cowens perjures herself in the wiretap affidavit, the Title III wiretap affidavit. She perjures herself on the stand, okay? She is involved in a illicit romantic relationship with a DEA agent in the middle of an investigation of Cuffy, right? And all of her testimony, everything is allowed to stand and stay in the case, and he gets convicted. Now, there was some other cases, the unaliving of the 2 government witnesses that are tied to him and some other drug cases. But the way Cuffy explains it, this Tammy Cowan's case was the linchpin case that they used to give him superseding indictments for the other cases, which led to him getting convicted. He was initially, from the way I understand it, looking at the death penalty because of the lives of the undercover government informants.
They frown on that.
That were tied to him. But with all of the bullshit that was going in the case, the judge, man, almost threw out the case. The judge almost threw out the case because of all of the nonsense that I just highlighted, right? And from what I understand, she waited a year. The judge waited a year to rule because she was torn. Like, this is no good. Like, this evidence that you guys, this wiretap, what was used and how it was done, this illicit relationship between the informant and and she told them, work out a deal, man. Get a deal done. And I think the government came down off the homicide joint. Came down off the death penalty joint. Even came down further to not even give him life in prison. But he ended up getting, I think, 27 years in total. 10 on another drug case and 17 on the gun charges. Ran consecutive. And, but the reason like I say, I'm pro Cuffy is because it just, not to say Cuffy is a model citizen but in the United States of America, United States citizens, you deserve your due process in court, right? And it should be a clean process. In this particular case, it wasn't. And I think his case needs to be reviewed just for all of the nonsense that went on. And I think he needs to be let out, man. I think he really needs to be let out.
Well, I think anytime there's some kind of, corruption or, the government's not playing fair, or people are caught lying on the stand, perjuring themselves. Anytime something like that comes up, to me, I think it should be thrown out. And I always use the O.J. Simpson as, listen, in my opinion, O.J. butchered those 2 people. You know what I'm saying? But and so people are like, oh, he should have been found guilty. No, he should have been. The jury did what's right. So you can sit here and say
he got his day in court.
He went to court. Do I think he's guilty? Absolutely, I think he did it. Well, yeah, but you're saying that he was found not guilty. That's right. It is right, because the truth is you've got a detective on the stand that's lying. And the moment you find out that there's a potential of people planting evidence, that there's blood where there shouldn't be blood, that he's a racist, and he's saying he's not a racist. I never said this.
They busted him on the stand.
Right, he's blatantly lying. He's prejudiced, and there's the potential that evidence has been planted. Even if you said, well, yeah, he's doing it to make sure because they know that he did. I don't care. You can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? It doesn't matter. And I think he's guilty. He's absolutely guilty. And I feel horrible that those people didn't get justice, because they should have. But that's not because they didn't get justice because of the jury.
It's the misconduct of the law.
It's the misconduct of the detective.
I think about 5 DEA agents got fired as a result of this. The group supervisor of the Atlanta DEA who had the alleged affair with Tammy Counts, he got fired.
Right.
Other DEA agents that were called to testify at the Franks hearing pled the fifth.
Right.
Right? So it was just a mess, man. And this takes me back to your interview with Rand.
So there's all that fallout, but you hold up the warrant that allows them to get.
Exactly.
So how can you have all that fallout and not go ahead and say, I'm suppressing the affidavit for the
exactly
for the wiretap? Sorry.
Exactly.
I can't think at all, bro.
Exactly, man. That was the crazy part, and it brought me back to the interview you did with Rand, where he said that the FBI would come in and they would just butcher, they would mess up cases, you know, that they, you know what I'm saying? And in this particular case, you know, it was just total misconduct, man. And this case should have got thrown out, and you know, Cuffy should have been let go. And I think now he's served. I think he's done like about 11 or 12 years. You know what I'm saying? I think he needs a review of his case and a reconsideration. But it was a mess, man. They got pictures, and I haven't gotten to this part yet. I'm also going to be doing, I've done 40 videos on this whole case.
Oh my God.
Part 40.
How long are they?
Some of them are 50 minutes, some of them are 14 minutes, some of them, they're all different lengths.
Okay.
But I've done 40 videos on about 1,000 pages of information that I've read. And I'm still got Keith Cromer's testimony left. And then I got about 192 pages worth of where the DEA agents from St. Louis get on the stand and are cross-examined by the defense. Tammy Cowens has pictures in her phone of the DEA agent in the bed at a hotel. They went on a trip together, right? All of this was presented as evidence in court, right? I mean, blurred line. I mean, and yet, like I say, 5 of the agents got fired, man. And I just think Cuff got done wrong, man. And that's why I'm pro Cuffy, and I'm just shedding light on the case in hopes that he can get released, man, and get back to his family, because I doubt 50 Cent is in touch with him. And I'm in touch with Cuffy all the time. He texts me, because I want to do more interviews, and he says, Sean, I can't. 50 Cent is telling me don't do no more interviews, you know what I'm saying? Because I know they've done it. 50's done the BMF joint. He's getting ready to release a Tammy Cowens documentary. And so the next nigga left, the only nigga left is Cuffy. So I believe if they released Cuffy tomorrow, he wouldn't have to touch another drug or do another crime. That the moment he touches down, 50 Cent is going to straighten him out, and he's going to do his life story, and you know what I'm saying, he can get back to his family. And you know, his health is not the greatest, and he's older. He's almost 60 years old now. He might even be 60.
Right.
So that's why my affinity is for Cuff, because my main nigga, my nigga Black, him and Cuffy been down with each other since the 80s.
Hey, you guys, check out the Podcast with Soul on YouTube and Spotify. We're going to leave the link in the description box. And if you want to see Sean's life story, the video will be right here. And please consider joining our Patreon. It's $10 a month, and it really does help Colby and I make these videos. Okay. See ya.
They was just rambling.